All right. Today is Friday, June, what is it, the 16th? 17th?
The 17th, yeah.
17th, yeah. And it's 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. My partner here is Lloyd Lofton with Power Behind the Sales, and my name is Dan Vignal with WebPres Video. I want to welcome you to our live weekly discussion for financial security sales professionals, where we talk about the business of selling annuities, life insurance, and healthcare coverage, as well as employee benefits. And on this week's show, we will be discussing, or what we will be talking about, are specific ideas for engaging some niche market prospects. And if we have time, maybe a few sales techniques as well, but especially in regard to using current events to reach out and engage prospects. Now, before we get started, let me just once again direct your attention to the chat bar on the right. And if you'd like to join our discussion on the screen with us, you can simply click on the little private chat icon on the far right of the chat box, and then click on the link provided, and that will put you in the queue so that we can admit you to the screen. All right, Lloyd, let's start with yesterday's increase by the central bank of the Fed rate and where the sales opportunities might be for annuities or life insurance.
Yeah, well, I want to. Hi, everybody. I'm in Marshalltown, Iowa this week. My grandson's third birthday was last Monday. We're having the party tomorrow, and then Sunday I'm driving back to Atlanta, so I'll be back in my usual haunts then. In some ways, I guess the first question I would ask you is, do you have your email templates ready? Do you have your Facebook ads ready to go? Because the Fed's doing this should not have been a big surprise to anybody, right? Dan, they've been talking about doing this for several months now. So we should have had our marketing ready to roll. And then I want to point out the other thing that's obvious. It's obvious to me. Hopefully, it's obvious to everybody watching. Is that every news agency you go to, regardless of who it is, regardless of your politics, wherever you get your news from, wherever your prospects get their news from, those news agencies spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars with staff and outside companies to write headlines specifically designed for the consumer to click on it. So if you're looking for a marketing message, just go find 3 headlines from 3 different resources that refers to the Fed's raising the interest rate, the base points up 75 points. Just get those headlines, and that's the subject line in your marketing. And the reason we know that that's going to be an excellent return for you, we know that you're going to get good engagement, is because the news agency spent a fortune paying people to write those headlines so they'll click it. So let me, if I can, I want to share my screen here. I put something together on this exact topic that I think would be good for us to discuss.
While you're doing that, Lloyd, let me just make a point or remind people that one of the things that you have stressed in your coaching is that current events create the messaging that we can use to reach out to our clients and prospects to get their attention and their engagement. So, whether there's always something in the financial news. I mean, whether it's interest rates or banks, contracting, or cryptocurrencies, or whatever it might be, those are always reasonable messages that you can use to literally pick up the phone, call a prospect or a client, and bring that topic up and say, a lot of my clients or a lot of my prospects, a lot of people I talk to are concerned these days about, in this case, the increase in the Fed rate and how it affects their portfolio or their retirement or their financial planning. And I just wanted to check in with you and see what your thoughts are. Anyway, with that having been said, go ahead and show us your slides here, Lloyd.
Yeah, let me make 2 points about what you just said. One of them is when you see the headlines coming out, if you're using a service like Dan's and you've got a video that relates to the headline, that's
Right.
the time to take that headline, put it in the subject line, send the email out, and when people watch the video, you get notified they watch the video, and you call them
Right.
because you know it's top on their mind. The other thing, look what's happened. Look what happened to Bitcoin. That's down to like 30 in the 30s now.
Oh, it's
It's
in the
not six,
20s. No,
in the
it's
20s.
almost down to 20.
Yeah, so it's not 60,000 anymore. So what's the relevant question? If you're into Bitcoin, of the money you have left, there's the headline for you. Of the money you have left, how much do you not want to risk anymore so you can be more confident with the money you keep in Bitcoin? And whatever number they mention, that's the rollover. You
Yeah.
don't have to convince people to get rid of Bitcoin. You just have to ask them of the money you have left, how much do you not want to risk anymore? I mean, that's the question. So
Right.
let's talk about the interest rates. So we know the interest rates have been low for a long time, what, 10, 12 years or something. And with the recent uptick in the Fed rates, and to Powell's credit, which some people say he should have done this last year, but to Powell's credit, I mean, we have to work with what we have, right? You have to sell the cars on the lot. You have to order the food that's on the menu. To Powell's credit, he did say he's going to do the same thing again next month.
Right.
So with the recent uptick in the Fed rates, some economists think the rates are going to go higher. And all of this is predictable. We already know this is going to happen. But here's my challenge to you, to everyone watching this now and on the replays. If this happens, or when this happens, given the inverse relationship between bond values and rates, if your clients own bonds, can they see the market value of their bonds go down? I mean, is that a
Of course.
possibility that they're going to see the market value of their bonds go down? And the following question to them is that what you want to have happen? And because we know when the interest rate goes up, the bonds go down, would it make sense to move some of that money out of bonds? We're not trying to convince them to move everything out, but I'm going to show you an example I thought of. It makes sense to me, and it might not make sense to some of you watching this. Let's say your client's a couple. Let's say that we're going to profile them as they're both 64 years old. We're going to say they've got a pension from work. They both worked at the company or the factory or whatever for 30 years. They both got a pension. They both have Social Security, which means the male's probably getting more than the wife, depending on their income. And that covers a majority of their retirement income needs. But they also have 200,000 in bonds. And while they'd like the income from it, the relevant question to ask them is, do you need the income from those bonds to live on? Because if they don't need the income from those bonds to live on, and they don't want to spend that money down instead of losing it, they don't want to spend the money down. So those bonds become a primary asset to transfer to the heirs. And so, as Powell said, he's going to do this again next month. This is predictable. So in that rising interest environment, what can you do to help them? Well, here's an idea. I think life insurance is a great option for them. So here's how I would position it. Let's say that they sell half their bond portfolio. Remember, we're not trying to convince them that bonds are bad. The question is, of the money you have left, how much do you not want to risk anymore? So they sell half their bonds, and they put, let's just say they put 100,000 in a guaranteed universal life survivorship policy. If a standard non-tobacco male, age 64, and a standard non-tobacco female, 64, would leverage 100,000 to a guaranteed death benefit of $333,000. I mean, you get 3 times their assets with a stroke of the pen. On money they're losing anyway. I mean, I can't stress that enough. On money they're losing anyway, and will be for the foreseeable future. So instead of possibly watching their bond values decline, they can more than triple the $100,000 as a legacy for their heirs. And the GUL can protect their assets and even multiply their assets in a rising rate. And the idea will come from you. So what do you think about that, Dan?
Well, yeah, makes sense. Let's kind of expand on that a little bit. Some other opportunities. So I think there are two things. You're going to have prospects who have money in bonds and certainly money in the market. So, I mean, I think the nature of the conversation you have with your prospect is, what do you think is going to happen? These are unprecedented times, at least for the last 20 years. What do you think is going to happen to your portfolio? And they'll probably tell you, well, my portfolio, my stocks have already gone down. My bonds are going down, or my bond funds, or whatever it is. How do you feel about that? If you're retired, again, there are so many variations on this scenario. If you're currently retired, how's that affecting your retirement income? And you might get a response that might be total panic. Like, I don't know, I'm living on the edge right now. I count on my portfolio going up by 10% every year, or 8%, or whatever it might be. And now it's going down. And you say, okay, well, what does that mean? I can't afford that. Okay, that immediately opens the door to guaranteed income, an annuity. If you're talking to somebody who's not yet retired, but preparing to retire, and say, well, what's that doing to your retirement fund? And they say, well, it's down. And okay, well, how is that going to project? When are you going to retire? 7, 8 years, 5 years, 4 years? When are you going to retire? And where do you think your portfolio is going to be then? Because assuming that we now have 8.5% inflation that they're reporting, and interest rates are going to go up, and how do you think that's going to affect inflation? And let them answer it, as you said. Let them answer the question, and they'll probably say, well, everything's going to cost more. My retirement's going to cost more. Well, what are you going to do to offset that? I don't know. Or, my investment advisor said, just hang in there. I said, well, are you comfortable just hanging in there? I'm not. Now that opens the door for an annuity. Now, if you're talking to somebody who says, yeah, I've got a big portfolio, I have assets in reserve, whether it's stock market, real estate. Incidentally, I think certainly real estate's going to be affected by these rise in interest rates, because mortgage rates have already gone up almost by 50% just in the last 6 weeks, and they're probably going to go up another 50% in the next 4 weeks. So that's going to affect residential sales, possibly commercial sales. And if you're invested, if part of your portfolio, either through a real estate investment trust or through your own appropriation of assets, your own properties, how is that going to affect you? You need to get people talking about their portfolio, about their money, not coming to them with, hey, I've got an idea. Have you thought about doing this? No, don't broach a problem. Don't create a problem until the prospect does. So what you're going to do is use the turmoil in the market to engage them in a discussion about their money, and find out what their fatal flaw is. Find out what they're afraid of. Because the other opportunity, as you said with the life insurance, is when if they say, well, I've got money in bonds, and I'm planning on keeping those bonds in case I need, my wife and I need to go into a nursing home, or we need care, or we run out of money, that's in reserve. Or I'm keeping that money I've got bonds appropriated for my children, and they're going to inherit those. And that's when you say, well, what if there was a better alternative to the bonds that are subject to the central bank's declaration of the Fed rate? What if you had more control over that? What if you had a bond, or something like a bond, that never went down in value? In fact, what if you had something like a bond that, if you did go into a nursing home, it would double or triple in value? They're going to say, well, okay, yeah, I'd be interested in that. So you didn't say, would you be interested in a long-term annuity? Or would you be in, or annuity with a long-term care rider, or life insurance, single premium life insurance with an LTC? You didn't mention that because they don't want that. But if you ask them, do you want something like a bond where your money is safe and it's not going to go down and it's insured? And oh, by the way, if you need the money, you can get to the money. And if you need it for long-term care, it'll actually double or even triple. Now you've got their attention. Does that make sense, Lloyd?
It makes perfect sense. Let me unpack a little bit of that if I could. One thing is I made a note when you talk about the advisor, they say, oh, I'm going to keep my money in my bond right now.
Yeah.
The similar question for them is now when you keep your money in the bonds that are going down in value, does your advisor make more money or less money?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a good question because it highlights the fact that while your bond assets are going down, the advisor is still making money, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is let's look at the waterfall effect of those Fed rates. So right now, and I'm just going to go in progression of lifestyle issues. So Powell came out and said we're going to do 75 base points. That means the very next bond check that comes out is less money, right? The income is less. Now, what happens when that next check comes out?
Well, it's not actually the income that's going to be less. The value of the bond is going to be less. But the coupon rate will be the same, right? But now that your asset, you've actually lost value in your portfolio.
So the very next month, your portfolio is worth less money.
Right.
Okay. But what else happened the next month? Gas prices went up again.
Right.
Food prices went up again. Movie ticket prices went up again. Meat went up again. Clothing went up again. You know what else went up again? Because you had that great income coming from the bond, because this profiled couple we talked about, both 64, had pensions and Social Security. They felt like they were kind of set. They didn't really need the income from the bonds. They got a Med Advantage plan because they didn't want to pay that monthly premium for a Med Sup.
Right.
So they got a zero premium Med Advantage plan. They were deluded into thinking zero premium meant zero out of pocket. And now they've got a maximum out of pocket of about $6,700 a year plus medication. So your bond value went down the very next, the month after Powell said that. So this tells you when he does it in July, in August, your bond is going to go down again.
Yeah.
Gas price is going to go up. The price of that T-bone steak you like is going to go up. Asparagus is going to go up. Bread's going to go up. The donuts you like to get are going to go up. I went to McDonald's here in Marshalltown, Iowa. When I'm here, I buy a large French vanilla iced coffee and a sausage burrito. A year ago when I was here, the large French vanilla iced coffee was $1.79. It was $2.79 today. Last year, the sausage burrito was 99 cents. It was $1.79. I got a large French vanilla iced coffee and a sausage burrito, and it was $5.01.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen is now when you go for your medication, it's going to cost more money. Now when you want to have that procedure or that treatment, outpatient treatment, because you wanted to save money on the Medicare supplement premium, which means you don't have any out-of-pocket expense other than your Med Sup premium, you got a zero premium Med Advantage plan. Now that's gone up. Now you got more money out of the pocket. So while what Powell did is good, and a lot of people feel like it should have been done a year or so ago, if not 2 years ago, the impact of that on your finances for the next 2 years, is that going to make you more financially healthy or more financially fearful? Which one's it going to make you? See,
Right.
that's what I hear you talking about, Dan. Those are the kind of questions you have to ask people and then get them to tell you the story. If they say it makes me more fearful, tell me where you feel the most pain. Where's the problem the most? Is it your income? Is it your payments? Is it your food? Where do you see that hitting you the most? And where are you going to get the money for the shortfall?
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of conversation you got to have.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you get into that conversation. And then once you get into it, how you conduct it. So I think the first thing you had mentioned at the beginning of this, your templates, your email templates, your Facebook ads, or whatever should all be ready to go, or at least adapt to a current event so that you can get it out there.
Right.
Now, I think that's fine. That's marketing. I'm more of a proponent of, pick up the phone and talk to people, or in some way, but even by email or text message. You need to engage people one-on-one because everybody's situation is a little bit different. Certainly you can get leads by social media marketing or pay-per-click marketing or email marketing. What I'm talking about is how do you know who your prospects, or you should know who your prospects are. You should know who your clients are, and your clients should be prospects. And then you should have a list of leads or prospects that you haven't sold something to.
Well, shouldn't the first people you go to be your existing client base?
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. But one of the things that I run into, Lloyd, and I don't know if you do this with your clients, your coaching clients, I run into so many of our agents and advisors, and I ask them, how big is your database of clients, leads, and prospects? And I get answers like, well, I don't really have one. Or sometimes, I have 75 or 80, and I've been in the business for 20 years. Or, in rare cases, I get somebody who says I have 350 or 500. And I go, okay, well, you're in business. You've got 500 prospects or 350 prospects that you can pick up the phone. They know who you are, and they at least respect you enough to answer your call. If you don't have 350 or 100 even people that will take your phone call, you're entirely dependent on strangers raising their hand and saying, I'll talk to anybody about this subject. And it doesn't need to be you or you or you or you, because I don't know any of you. I have no relationship. All I know is I need information. That's raw material. That's a cold call. What I'm saying is, I've been a proponent of this for 20 years, maybe longer. You need to have a database of prospects who include your clients and referrals from your clients and family members of your clients. That is your network. Those are your people. And you should be comfortable enough to pick up the phone and call them or send them an email and engage them in a conversation about current events or anything that affects their money.
Let me challenge something on that. I think that you should also, one of the first places you should go to is your inventory. Inventory is any leads you bought in the last 2 years. Any lead. You should reach out to them. You can't lose something you don't have. You already spent the time, resource, and money to get that lead. And I think you should be uncomfortable enough to make the damn phone call. You can't lose something you don't have. But you'd be surprised how many times over the years I called a lead that was a year or two old. I might have had to go through 15 or 20 phone calls, but I would get somebody on the phone and end up making some good money off of that.
Yeah.
And the reason I say you should be uncomfortable enough, the reason you're uncomfortable, just to be honest with you, is you're not running a business.
Right.
If you were running a business, you would have had a drip marketing program to stay in front of them the whole time.
Right. Well, and you'd have a database of prospects. That's your inventory. David Howe asked the question, what about inflation riders increase the income, which causes more possibility? Well, it's an incomplete sentence there, David, but I think what you're saying is inflation riders on an annuity or on any product would offset the inflation that's affecting the value of assets or the value of income. And yes, you're absolutely correct. Another reason why, if you're talking with somebody, say, well, wouldn't it have been great if you had a rider or had an increase tied to the CPI, that your income goes up or the value of your asset goes up? Wouldn't it be nice to have that? What would you like? Would you like something like that? Again, these are all questions that you can ask. You can tee it up for them to answer, but don't tell them. Ask them. Let them tell you. And if they don't give you the answer that you want, keep asking questions. Because sooner or later, if you are doing a good job, if you are sincerely, authentically, and transparently trying to help them, make decisions about their money. And if you get them talking about their money, and as Lloyd, as you said, if you get them talking about what are they afraid of, what are they concerned with, how is inflation going to affect them, how is recession going to affect them, how are higher bond prices going to affect them, what is going to affect your money, and let them talk. And then be very careful about listening. I mean, you are a professional and you have a bag of tricks, if you will, sitting in your briefcase or sitting in your laptop. It's your job as a creative professional to listen very carefully and think very carefully and come up with solutions based on the problem that the prospect in front of you has. I am not talking about a mass media problem and solution. I'm not talking about going out there and saying, here's a problem that everybody faces and here's the solution to everybody's problem. That is not what a consummate professional does. That would be like a doctor saying, everybody's going to get COVID and everybody needs the vaccine no matter what. Everybody. Now, that may be a politically charged or emotion, but what I'm saying is a doctor doesn't say ever, everybody needs this. Everybody needs diabetic medicine. Everybody needs a new heart. No, it's all specific to the particular patient or the particular person. And we get caught up in the marketing realm, in advertising and marketing. They treat demographics as homogenous groups. And then they come to us and say, as individual agents or advisors or business owners, that you have a homogenous group and you say the same thing to all of them. And that is simply not true. And it's not the way to treat treat people. They want to be treated as individuals. And if you don't have the time, or you're not willing to pick up the phone and call them or send them an email or send them a text message specific to them, then you're not a professional. You can be a marketing guy. You can be a great marketer. Hey, I send out 10,000 ads or pay-per-click ads for final expense, and I get X number back every month, and I sell X number. You're a marketing guy. You're not a sales professional. You're just a marketing guy. Nothing wrong with that. You can make a lot of money doing that, but that's not who we're talking to on this show.
Yeah, well, let me go back to something you said. Really, what you're doing is you should have a stack presentation. So one question logically leads to the next question, and your questions should be fluid enough that you can pivot from one question and immediately go down to a different topic. So, for example, I'll throw in RMDs, required minimum distributions. Do you know that required minimum distributions are similar in conversation structure as the income from bonds going down when the interest rates go up? And here's what's similar about that. For one thing, the government did us a great favor. They extended our marketing into this demographic by 2 years.
Right.
Before, you had to talk to people about RMDs at age 70. Now we've got to 72.
Right.
That's a great thing to have happen. The other thing that happens at age 72 is the same thing that happened at 70, but it's more impactful. And here's what that is. What used to be an asset that they relied on to fund their future, the balance of their retirement, as soon as that RMD hits, now becomes a liability that they have to report as income when they may not need it. It's kind of like the bond income. If they don't need the income from bonds and the asset of the bonds is going down, do they see that as a problem? The
Right.
same thing with RMDs. When you get that RMD, when's the time to talk about an RMD? In my opinion, it's not 6 months before the RMD takes place. It's not a year before the RMD takes place. It's not 2 years before the RMD takes place. It's when you first meet with them. You need to have a strategy about the RMD. And the reason for that is because the RMD, in a lot of cases, particularly for your middle to higher net income people, is actually a health insurance tax deduction if you pay an annual premium on long-term care. So you could be talking to someone at 65 years old. You could talk about the RMD coming up in 7 years, right? Put a plan in place for it now. And that long term care policy, you could free that money up that they're going to pay for that long term care policy. Because if you're doing your job right, you should be talking short term care and long term care. I don't know which one is going to be best for them. But you can let them know that you have a plan, that they have a plan in place. When they turn 72, you're going to immediately free up the money they're paying for that long-term care, because you're going to reposition the RMD money to pay for that long-term care, and they'll have more cash flow going into the retirement years that they don't have to report to the IRS and pay taxes on.
Right, right. So you're getting into some specific solutions, and you and I have talked about how we want to do more of that on this show. But I think that the point I'm trying to make, and I know that you coach your people on this, is that every situation can be almost infinitely complicated. So you could be dealing with a single, you could be dealing with a married couple, you could be dealing with a single who's divorced 3 or 4 times, living in different states. You can have somebody might have 2 or 3 families from different marriages. All of this complicates things. They might have one investment advisor. They might have 2 or 3 investment advisors. They might have portfolios all over the place. They might have money out of the country. Or, and this is more typical, I mean, I'm talking about the top 1 or 2%. And while I think that there's certainly that, they have a lot of discretionary money that makes it attractive to financial advisors to work with them because they can make more money. On the other hand, there's 50% of America that is capable of buying things like life insurance and annuities, and in fact, need them far more than the wealthy. The wealthy will get by. Worst case scenario with the wealthy is that they lose some money, more money than they need. They pay more tax than they want to pay, but they get by. The bulk of the American public, the working public, needs our services way more than the top 2%, the high net worth individuals. Yes, you can probably make easy money more that way by managing assets under management and selling large policies. Go for it. But there's a tremendous underserved market. LIMRA has talked about this. NAPA has talked about this. A lot of the insurance companies have done surveys and research, and we know that people need life insurance and want life insurance. We know that they want and need guaranteed income, and they are not being addressed. We are not talking to them. And when you talk to them, their circumstances, it's not like selling, it's not like you're not selling the same solution to everyone. Yes, you may find that an indexed annuity is a very versatile product that a lot of people can use, but not all the same designed indexed annuity. And it's not always from the same company. So it's incumbent upon us to get to know our prospects very well and let them learn to trust us, because we're listening to them. And not just listening, but we're gathering all the information that constitutes their financial condition and their situation. And then we're using our creative knowledge and experience and ability as sales professionals to come up with a solution that's going to not only solve their problem, but put a smile on their face and remove a lot of the stress that middle-class Americans live with because of the uncertainty of their financial future. I'm off my soapbox. Had to say that.
I love it. I love it. No, let me tell you what I was thinking about, and I was picturing in my mind as I'm listening to you so eloquently put that. I'm thinking about the journey, and I think every advisor needs to do this. And those that know me know that I preach this all the time. I think my mother died at age 88. She had vascular dementia. She lived with my wife and I the last 2 years of her life. My mother-in-law died at 89. She died of pancreatic cancer. and she lived with us the last year of her life. They both died here in our house in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, my mother died in hospice, but my mother-in-law died in our house. But take people on that journey. You're now 85 years old. So you're talking to a prospect who's 60, 55, 64 years old. You're now 85 years old. You're 85, your wife's 83. Tell me about the house you live in. And if they do this, they're expecting to live in the house they're in. What's the property taxes on that house? How much repair have you had to do to that house? Talk to me about just an average day. Give me an average day of going to the grocery store, getting gas, picking up prescriptions, going to a doctor's appointment. Just talk to me about that. You're 85 and your wife's 83. And walk them backwards
Yeah.
to their age now. And let them tell you what the gas price is, what the food price is. The terminology you're looking for from them is I don't know.
Right.
We have no way of knowing. I can't predict that. And that's the best language they can use, because when you get them back to today, their age today, you start off your analysis of here's what I understand you want to have. Now, here's the other thing about this. This generation is the most studied generation in history.
The boomers?
The baby boomers, born from 1946 to 1964. We know everything that they went through. And when they started turning 65 in January of 2011, 10,000 a day, some people say 15,000 a day, we know everything they're going to go through. We know statistically at what age they're going to get arthritis, have the different health issues. If you got the right retirement software program, you know exactly when they're going to run out of money. It's the unknowns we don't know about. So when we can get them to take us on this journey, their perception of that ideal retirement life, and walk backwards to today, you don't have to sell them on the problems they have. They're going to identify each of those problems with you. And I'll tell you what I include on that. I'm 68 years old. 10 years from now, my grandson, who we're having his 3rd birthday tomorrow, is going to be 13. I'm going to be 78 years old. Do you think there's a chance when I'm 80 or 85 that I might want to help him buy his first car? But I'll guarantee you this, most advisors would never have that kind of conversation with me.
Right.
Because
Exactly
they don't think that way.
Right.
Most advisors are never going to ask me, have I considered putting any money aside for a 529 plan?
Right.
And you know why they don't know this? Because they weren't interested in my story.
Right.
Let me share this with you. When I turned 65, I did 2 things. I did a video every day for 6 months up to me turning 65. And I talked about every insurance agent that contacted me, every marketing piece I got. I kept every marketing piece. When insurance agents would leave me a voice message, I kept the voice message. And here's the conversation every one of them, without exception, had with me. Hi, can I talk to Lloyd Lofton? That's how I knew they were a salesperson. None of my family, friends, or relatives call up and say, can I talk to Lloyd Lofton? They say, hey, Lloyd, how you doing?
Yeah.
I knew they were a salesperson. They said, have you gotten on Medicare yet? Did you get on Part A and B? I can save you money. That's the damn script they all use.
Right.
None of them cared about that I had a pacemaker. I had 3 strokes. I was on medication. When I had the stroke, I lost the use of my fingers in my left hand. I couldn't walk. I lost the vision of my right eye. None of them cared about any of that, because they were only interested in selling their carrier, their product, and their price. And that's the same thing for advisors. You should not be contacting people to talk about the plan you're going to put together for them. You should be talking about what does retirement look like for them? What's their vision of that? And get them to take you on that journey with them. And you should do the same things. If you're a guy, I'm going to be sexist here. If you're a guy, you should do the same things you did with your wife. You should pretend that you give a damn. When you were dating her, right? Pretend you care. You know, guys go to the florist shop and look around. Yeah. What's the cheapest thing we can get? But if you listen to your wife and you know she likes dandelions, or you know she likes, what are carnations, you don't go to the florist shop and pick the cheapest thing. You go to the flower shop and say, I need carnations. Well, we can't figure out what carnations your clients are interested in if we don't actually have an interest in their life. So the journey's what matters. And the ironic thing, the great thing about having them take you on their journey is they're going to identify two things. They're going to identify what matters most to them and what scares them the most. You can't do anything about what matters to them, but you can help them eliminate what scares them the most. And my guess is if you help them eliminate what scares them the most, you're going to be helping them get what matters the most.
That's very, very well put. Let's kind of self-efface here. You and me. I mean, we're part of that baby boomer generation, and we've grown up in an agent advisor environment where there was a lot of focus on retirement and older age products, long-term care and Medicare and things like that. But I think there's two things we should talk about. One is there are a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s who have money, have discretionary income, or more importantly, have needs for the products that we sell, life insurance and annuities and healthcare coverage and what employee benefits, pension plans. And yet it seems like every agent and advisor is almost exclusively focused on high net worth individuals. And I think it's imperative that we start talking about, not that market is saturated. It isn't. There's money to be made there. And maybe it's easy money. I don't know. But I tend to think more in terms of there's a niche in the market. There's a gap in the market. There's an unfilled expectation, an unfilled need in the market. And we should be filling that. So 20, 30, 40-year-olds, they may be singles. They may be couples without any children. They may be families. Let's think about serving them, okay? Maybe you can pick out a market. Maybe say, I specialize in families with teenagers, or I specialize just in families. I just want to work with families. Or maybe I just work with same-sex couples. Or maybe, and I know that they don't have any children, and I know that they have two incomes, and I know that they have discretionary income, and I am experienced in that. I know how to talk to them. I know how to respect them. I know what the laws are that vary from state to state in terms of their marriages and their divorces. And then, maybe I prospect exclusively because I'm Hispanic. Maybe I only work in the Hispanic market. Maybe I only work in the African American market or the Asian market. Whatever it is, specialize in it. But almost every agent or advisor I talk to says, what market do you work in? Retirement planning. And I want people who have a minimum of $500,000 of investable assets. And I said, okay, that's, you're cutting out a big sector of the market. I mean, if you're saying, those are people that have a net worth of $500,000 in expendable income. And we know that in the United States, 90% of Americans' net worth is in their home. So are you talking about they have, $500,000 in their home and $500,000 in their IRA, 401k, or investment portfolio? How do you choose your market? How do you segment your market from that? Another thing that's critically important is the baby boomer generation is in the process of inheriting trillions of dollars. But the millennials and the Gen X, they're going to inherit all that and some if the boomers don't spend it all. But the point is, inheritance is huge. I've talked to people who didn't have enough saved to retire, and then suddenly an in-law dies or a couple of parents die, and they inherit a house, and they're the only child, or there's two kids, and suddenly they have $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in after-tax cash that they've never had in their entire life. And maybe they have an $80,000 income and a middle-class lifestyle. And suddenly it's like winning the lottery for them. if you don't have those people in your database, if you're not talking with them, if you don't have a relationship with them, they're going to fall prey to the next con man that comes along, or the investment advisor who just says, "Oh, you got $500,000-$600,000. Let me manage that for you." And then, they charge them a fee, and they don't know what they're doing with it. And as you pointed out, and I'll end it here, they never ask the questions about, what do you want to do with this money? What is important in your life? Who are your children? What are they doing? Which ones need help? Which ones don't need help? What are you prepared to do? How do you expect to live? Do you expect to live past 80, 85? Do you have a history of cancer in your family or Alzheimer's? All of those things are relevant. And I'll guarantee you that 90% of the people on this call that's watching this never ask those questions. And you are being negligent in developing a relationship and serving your clients purposefully and professionally by not asking those questions and getting to know them that well.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Two things I would point out about this. One is the insurance industry, has done a poor job of training advisors, because as I preach all the time, IMOs and carriers recruit agents and advisors to a company, a product, a price, and a commission, and a lead. That's the five things they recruit them to. So if I'm going to look at, if I'm new in the business, if I'm moving from being a life insurance agent to a financial advisor, and I honestly want to say, how do I figure out my niche market? I'm going to take you back to an old school philosophy of putting together your plan. Okay, here's the old school philosophy. I was stupid enough as a young agent in this business to figure out, as a result of a really smart sales manager, that I should go talk to people who are actually buying the products I'm selling. I shouldn't spend my time talking to people who I want to sell to. So the question, if that seems reasonable, the question is, well, Lloyd, you're so smart. How do I find out who's buying the products? Well, here's one way to find that out. Who's selling those products? The carriers. The insurance carriers know who's buying their product. They know that it's a married couple. They know they've got 2.3 kids.
Right,
They know
right.
what their income level is.
Yeah,
The carriers know who's buying those products, and the
yeah,
carriers have that data. Most people just don't ask for it.
right,
So
right,
if I sit in on a webinar of somebody presenting, an index IUL, my first question is, profile the client for me.
right, right,
Profile the policyholder. Tell me who's buying this policy. And
right,
they'll give me that data.
right,
They'll even give me that data broken down by state. Some carriers are smart enough to give it to me by county.
right.
And then I can take that profile client, and then I can expand my marketing out.
Yeah,
So, my advice is always, you should market the products people are buying, not the products you want to sell.
yeah,
And then, of the products people are buying, this is the second component in there. Which product do you see yourself being the most comfortable presenting? It shouldn't be the product with the highest commission, and it shouldn't be the most complicated product to impress people. It should be the product that when you sit down at someone's kitchen table or sit across from them on a Zoom, you come across as natural, relatable, friendly, likable, and knowledgeable,
yeah,
because you know that product so well that you don't even have to think about the answer. That's the product you should be marketing. And everything else that goes along, the ancillary products and all that kind of stuff, that's all good and well. I'm a big believer in package selling. But the market, particularly in the senior market, is so in fact, there's hardly a market out there now that's not predictable.
right,
There's hardly a market out there now. If you go to 40, 45, 40 to 50-year-old married couples with incomes of 55 to 125,000 demographics, you can probably find tons of site that will give you a pretty good window into that marketplace. It's not that difficult anymore. A carrier or an IMOs, their interest is to get you to sign up for a product. That's how they make overrides. Nothing wrong with that. that's business. They're going to get you a lead to get you in production. And let me tell you this, friend, don't take offense where offense isn't meant. There's only one reason you need a lead. There's only one reason. You need a lead because you don't have a book of business.
Right.
If you had a book of business of 800 to 1,800 clients, you'd be getting enough referrals every month. You'd never have to buy a lead again.
Right.
So let's don't get mad at the lead vendors. Let's don't get mad at the IMOs. Let's don't get mad at the carriers. The reason we need a lead is because we don't have a book of business.
So
your
that's
job is to suffer long enough to build a book of business so that you don't need leads anymore.
Yeah, now that's a really good point. So I hear, that's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So people say, yeah, all right, I agree with what you say, Lloyd, but I don't have a book of business, or I haven't been diligent and conscientious enough to build a book of business. So right now, I only eat what I kill. I've got to sell something this week, right? I got to sell something this week, and I got to sell something next week. So the only way I can do that is if I buy leads. I know I got to buy 10, and maybe I'll sell 1 or 2. Okay. If that's the case, keep doing that because you got to stay in business.
Just keep in mind that those 10 leads you buy are called inventory.
Yes.
Change the label from leads to inventory.
Right.
And manage your inventory like any good business would do. Keep your inventory in decent condition like any good business would do. And make sure you turn your inventory so your inventory doesn't get old.
Right. So that's the next part of it. So you're absolutely right. If you buy 10 leads, those 10 leads go into your database. You may sell 1 or 2. And if you sell 1 or 2, you don't throw them out. They're still in your database. They're still part of your network. But here's the answer to that question. If that's who you are, you don't have a database, you don't have a network, you don't have inventory, and you're dependent on buying leads to stay in business, continue doing that. But keep all the leads, all of them, and put them into a database and market to them on a weekly basis, not once a year, not once every 6 months, not once a quarter, once a week. All right. If you're in business, you need to be providing valuable information on a regular basis in order to develop valuable relationships. Now, if you're buying 10 leads a week, it's going to take you a long time to build up a book of business or an inventory. That should be a minimum of 500 people that know you by your first name and are willing to accept a phone call or an email that you send them. You should have at least 1,000. I agree. If you can have 1,500 or 2,000, that's a big book of business. But if you have
just to put numbers on it, if you sold 250 med subs a year for 3 years at 18% commission with $150 a month premium, in your 4th year, your renewal income would be $134,000 a year.
Yeah, see that, and again, that's a great point. Yeah,
that's just math. The question is, what are you willing to do over the next 3 years to get $134,000 renewal income? In other words, whether you go to work in March or not, you still get that income.
So, you're coming across as a coach. And just as I said earlier, that you should be treating each client as an individual because their situation, their condition is unique. And you need to ask questions and find. It's the same thing with every agent and advisor I've ever talked to. Their situation is unique. Their condition is different. And you need to ask them. So you just said, if you sold 250 med supplements per year for 3 years. Okay, first of all, I don't know how many guys in the med supp business are selling 1 a day. I don't know. But if they did that, then yes, what you said, that's a great opportunity. But that's somebody who's selling med supps. And so, we had a discussion with Don Weber a couple of weeks ago, and he's a guy who's in that Medicare supplement business. And he also recognized that, hey, my clients are also buying life insurance and annuities, and I'm not selling it. I need to get into that business. So at least he recognized he had this database of about 1,500 that he said, I'm not marketing to these people. I sold them once. They call me up if they have questions, if I'm going to roll them into a different plan. But other than that, I don't talk to them. And so we put them on go ahead.
And those people have mothers and fathers.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Aunts and uncles.
Neighbors,
and I'm not sure.
friends.
I think those are called referrals.
Yeah. So again, we're not telling you that everybody does it the same way. What we're telling you is that you need to have a book of business. That's your inventory. That's how you stay in business. Now, if you want to, as Lloyd said earlier, if you know, hey, look, I want to sell IUL for tax-free retirement income because that's a big market and the margins are good, and okay, great. Go to your primary company, Allianz, National Life, Principal, whatever it might be, and you say, what is the demographic that is buying indexed IUL for tax-free retirement income? And they'll probably come back to you and they'll have very specific. Well, the median age or the average age is this. They're typically married. They typically have 2 income, whatever it might be, they're going to tell you. Then you go to a specific list broker and you tell them, I want a list of these people, these type of people, and I want it in this geographic area. And just buy 1,000. Buy 1,000. Put them into a database and call every one of them. Just pick up the phone and call. If you can call 50 a day, just even if you leave a message, call 50 a day, you'll be done with it in a month. But make sure that you are drip marketing on those people. You introduce yourself with an email or a text message, tell them who you are, tell them what you do, and drive them to your website so they can find out more about you. Start developing that relationship. Look at those 1,000 people as your book of business and cultivate it. And I can tell you, the agents and advisors who use our drip system, which features video content, which is more engaging than other types of content. But if you use video content, I can tell you that if you have 1,000 people in a database and you're drip marketing to them on a weekly basis, you're going to get between 10 and 20 people who are going to engage with that content every week. 10 to 20. Now, I know when I was in business, if I had 10 to 20 people who responded, and I don't mean respond by, hey, send me more information. I mean respond by, they saw the title of the article or they saw the title of the video and they said, that's interesting, I'm going to watch it or I'm going to read it. That's engagement. That's what I mean by engagement. If you have a way of tracking that so that you can pick up the phone when you know that they've just read this article or they just watched this video and they're engaged, and you pick up the phone, I say, I see that you just read an article on tax-free retirement income, or you just watched my video on tax-free retirement income. Tell me a little bit about your situation and why you're interested in that. You're immediately off to the races. That's how you develop relationships. That's how simple this business is if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and consistently drip on people and respond to those who are ready to talk to you when they're ready, not when you're ready. Over to you. We got to close out here in a few minutes.
Let me throw something else out there. There's another intrinsic benefit in everything we're talking about that we haven't spoken about. And that is the isolation, the loneliness, the rejection, the fear that we experience as sales professionals in this business. It's one of the hardest business in the world. It's worse than being a car salesman. And so one of the intrinsic benefits you get from doing exactly what you just talked about, Dan, is you wake up. I teach this to agents when I was working with a company that did health insurance. And here's the script I taught them. You call up a health insurance lead, and the person says, I just bought a health insurance plan last week. Most agents say, okay, thank you, hang up, this lead sucks, the vendor sucks, my manager sucks for giving me a bad lead. But really, here's what you should, here's a couple of things you should think about. First of all, you knew they were a buyer. You knew they've got the money to pay for it because they just bought a plan. You knew they could qualify for the plan because they just got the plan. And you know that 9 months to 12 months from now, they're going to get a rate increase. And you know when they get a rate increase, they're going to be looking around again. So there's a whole bunch of things I know about these people right off the get-go. And so here's the script. Dan, that's really good. I'm glad you got health insurance. And it's important that we get that taken care of so our family isn't at risk of high medical bills that weren't covered. So you can be proud of yourself for doing that. Do you mind if I ask you, what company did you get that with? I got it with Golden Rule. Golden Rule's a great company. You made a wise choice there. Do you mind if I ask what kind of plan did you get? Did you get one of those 80/20 plans? Yeah, I got 80/20 plan with $2,500 deductible. And about how much, if you recall offhand, about how much a month are you paying for that? I'm paying $800 a month for that. Dan, let me ask you a question. What objection do you have if I call you in the next 9 to 12 months to see if I can increase your benefits to lower your cost? 80% of the people are going to say, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Either to get you off the phone, why do I care? Or because everybody's interested, they know they're going to get a rate increase, and everybody's interested in finding out if you can get them a better deal later.
Yeah.
But here's the intrinsic benefit. I get to mark my calendar. And this is June. So somewhere around March of next year, I'm going to open my calendar up on March 17th, and I'm already going to have 10 or 15 people to call. And I'm going to have data on them. And if I've got a really good CRM, I could even go back and listen to the actual conversation. So
Yeah.
hope is a magic ingredient in motivating yourself and others.
Yeah.
And when you have activity that you don't judge and you don't label as good or bad, right or wrong, but you have activity,
Yeah.
then you feel like that you're actually running a business.
A business. Yeah.
So when you're sitting there waiting for an internet lead to be dropped into your email, and and I know what you do, you get that internet lead. The first thing you do is go to Google and type the address in. You look at the phone number, and on Google the phone number is different than is on the lead, and you immediately assume it's a lousy lead. You don't assume that the person's just a moron with a computer. You don't assume that instead of them hitting 6598, they hit 5689. They inverted their phone number. And so when you called that number and it wasn't the right number, you just assumed it was a bad lead instead of people just aren't good with a damn computer.
Right.
You don't actually run your business like a business. So the advantage of doing what Dan described to you a minute ago is that hope is a magic ingredient in motivating yourself and others. And so we need to run our business as a business. And I'm going to end it with this, if that's okay. When you go to a doctor and you get called into the doctor's office, have you ever noticed you don't see the doctor? You see the nurse. And the nurse says, tell me what's going on.
Right.
She doesn't look at you or make eye contact. She types what you tell her in a computer. Then she takes your blood pressure, maybe looks in your ear, takes your temperature. She says the doctor will be right in. When the doctor comes in, what does he do?
Looks at the chart.
Tell me what's going on. And he doesn't look at you. He
Right.
reads what the nurse wrote on the computer while he listens to what you're saying. And then he writes you a prescription. If the doctor said to you, hey, Dan, I know what's the matter with you. You can have this medicine, you can have this medicine, you have this medicine, you have this medicine. Which medicine do you want? Or you go to Dr. B, and Dr. B says, I know what's the matter with you. And he writes you a prescription, hands it to you, it says, fill this, take it twice a day, come back in 10 days and see me. Which doctor do you have more confidence in?
Yeah.
Dr. B, because he diagnosed the problem and prescribed a solution. So my advice to you as we jump off the call this week, start being Dr. B. Run your practice. Notice doctors call it a practice. Don't you think after 20 years in practice, they should actually know what the hell they're doing? It's a practice. Run your practice like a professional and give yourself hope. Go buy 1,000 profile leads. WS Ponton, great list vendor, high net worth people. You can get CD owners, MedSup owners. I don't make a dime for telling you that. They just do a great job. Get your list, upload it in your system, market, and make phone calls every day. Because you're a highly trained licensed professional. And if your prospect doesn't treat you that way, it may be because when you look in the mirror, you don't see a highly trained licensed professional. Keep an eye out on LinkedIn. We'll post our next show. We'll post the topic on there. And we'd love to hear from you. So go into the replay and type in, hey, Lloyd, hey, Dan, talk about this next time. And you know what we'll do? We'll actually talk about this next time. All right, guys, take care.